Good evening from Rocky Mountain PBS. I'm Cynthia Hessen. This is Colorado State of Mind. Tonight we come to District 1 in our series this month with the candidates for Congress. Congresswoman Diana DeGette has held the Denver seat since 1997 when she succeeded another long-term Democratic Congresswoman, Pat Schroeder. This year, Republican Danny Stroud is challenging DeGette to represent District 1, hoping to be the first Republican to win here in Denver since 1970. Here's our map once again, but District 1 is barely discernible. It's small in area but dense with an urban population that has grown more and more diverse in the past decade. Diversity usually makes it a friendly territory for Democrats, so let's turn to the reigning Democrat. Congresswoman, what are you telling voters in 2012? What do you want them to be aware of in this campaign?
Cynthia, I've been privileged to represent the 1st Congressional District now for 16 years, and it is a diverse district. It's Denver, Englewood, Cherry Hills Village, Sheridan, and now some wonderful neighborhoods in South Jefferson County are included in the new map. And I take these representative duties very seriously. So I try to look at what's important in our community, job creation, the economy, and all of the important entities we have here, healthcare, government, and I try to go to Washington and represent them. Even in the really toxic environment we've seen the last 2 years, I've been able to pass some really key pieces of legislation that benefit my district and the state by working across the aisle in a bipartisan way. I passed a bill to help address the terrible drug shortage problem that we're having in this country. I passed a bill to give hydropower producers regulatory relief so that they can produce this alternative energy in a bipartisan way. I was able to get our wonderful firefighters health insurance for themselves and their families. So there's a lot I've been able to accomplish. And in the next term, we have terrible challenges ahead of us. I believe my experience and leadership for Denver can help move us forward as a country.
All right, and we'll come back to some of those specific things, but now let's meet Danny Stroud, the Republican in this contest. A West Point graduate, a long-term military family is really what you come from, but 20 years out of the military. And you're an entrepreneur, a father, as we've been discussing, and now a candidate for Congress. What are you running on?
Well, thank you very much for doing this. Traditionally, Republican candidates, as you pointed out, don't get much standing in the 1st Congressional District or Denver, so it's I commend you for taking this effort, and it's really nice to see you again, and it's been a great campaign.
It has.
I'm just a citizen. I'm just kind of a normal guy. I'm not really a political animal. I graduated from West Point, and I spent my life as an adult actually I call it drinking deep from the American dream. I worked hard, I had a great family, I had great kids, and we were able to experience what I call the American dream, what most people would describe as the American dream. I stood on the shoulders of my parents and achieved more. For the first time in the history of America, that's not a given anymore. Our children and our grandchildren can't have that expectation. We have allowed the federal government to continue to regulate and tax and put pressure on the American dream such that it's hard to start a business, it's hard to grow a business. Colorado has finally reached up and matched the federal unemployment level. We have 250,000 people out of work here, and many of them women. And it's because we've made it difficult to achieve and to create jobs. We're not working on that. I think we're working more on regulation. Things like the Affordable Health Care Act or Obamacare is putting huge taxes and huge regulation on small business. We're not growing because of the uncertainty. I think that we need a new Congress, we need new leadership at the federal level, and that's really why I'm running, because we've lost touch at the leadership level with what Colorado needs, Colorado jobs, and what really is important here, and what our economic strengths could be here. So I think that it's really just time for a change. We deserve a better Congress. We need a Congress that's more focused on jobs and the economy and less on other agendas, and that's why I'm running. I think that we need a change.
All right, well, that's a good beginning. Let's talk about regulation, which you have both mentioned. I know that in the questionnaire you answered for the League of Women Voters, you said that regulation is a big thing that you would go after. Are you saying that you would dismantle regulatory structures we have in place now, and if so, where?
Well, you know, that's an inflammatory way to couch it. I just think that the government has lost perspective about individual liberties and the rights of states, and the federal government continues to put layer and layer of regulation. Environmental Protection Agency, for example, I know people in Denver that suffer under what seems to be oppressive regulations about silly things. I mean, we can talk about them in detail, but the point is that almost no one will disagree that there's that there. Then we got the Obamacare. I mean, it's 2,700 pages. That's going to translate into tens of thousands of regulation mandated by the federal government. It can't be good. Right now we're seeing, you talk to just about any small business owner, and part of the reason they're not hiring is the uncertainty about regulation around that. We have the Endangered Species Act. We have the Dodd-Frank bill. You know, we have all of these things that are coming down from the federal government. That's regulation. Bureaucrats basically writing rules from an unelected position when they're trying to make one-size-fits-all for everybody in the country with their regulation. I think that's not consistent with the American model.
Congresswoman?
Well, you know, I think that it's easy to say regulations are bad. And to be honest, nobody likes inappropriate or duplicative or overly burdensome regulations. But let's think about some of the things that, say, our environmental laws have done for us. I remember as a child growing up here in Denver, on winter days, you couldn't see the mountains here because of the air pollution. And then Congress, by the way, under a Republican president and a Democratic Congress, passed the Clean Air Act, which said that we need to clean up the air for the health of our children. Or the Safe Drinking Water Act, which said that the water that we are turning on our faucets and drinking and are giving our children needs to be safe. So there are certain regulations that are really important for the health and welfare of our country. Mr. Stroud is right that we don't want over-regulation. So that's why, for example, when President George W. Bush and the Republican Congress passed the Department of Homeland Security, which basically was a duplicative agency that took little pieces of other agencies and made a whole new behemoth of an agency, I voted against that because I thought that was just more duplication, and that's the way it's turned out to be. So I think rather than just saying regulation is bad, you have to look and see what regulation is doing. I'll tell you one place we need more regulations, and that's with food safety. We just passed the Food Safety Modernization Act in Congress. I was one of the main proponents of that bill, helping get it passed. It passed on a bipartisan basis, but under the Republican leadership in Congress now, we've been unable to move funding for inspectors to make sure that our food supply is safe. We need to have that appropriate regulation, but anytime there's overburdensome regulation or unnecessary regulation, I'm all for abolishing that.
I take it then, Mr. Stroud, you would go to Congress and vote to repeal all of Obamacare?
Well, that's half of the issue. I think that the approach taken for health care reform through Obamacare is the wrong approach. It's mandated from the federal government. There's dozens of things that can be done, that should be done, and they haven't been done because of impediments like insurance companies have restrictions about cross-state insurance policies. We have litigation issues. You know, we have portability issues and pooling issues. Those are all solutions that would satisfy the need for reform health care. But we have the greatest health care in the world. People come here from all over the world to get their health care here.
It's also among the most expensive.
Right.
Yeah, it is very expensive, and it's expensive because of one example that comes up is that the tests that are done by doctors is what I call litigation tests. I mean, I go to the doctor.
Where they're just covering themselves.
They just cover themselves. Those are costs. But we also don't have an informed patient environment. there's no opportunity to negotiate your bills because the insurance companies are controlling, with the codes and all that stuff. And you go to a doctor, you don't know what it's costing you. I think that if we put some of those more transparent things in place, allow the competitive market to work, I'm convinced that our health care can continue to be the best, but it doesn't need to be as expensive as it is.
Well, unfortunately, I'm glad to talk about the Affordable Care Act because I worked really hard on that bill in Congress. Before we passed it, we had 47 million Americans who were not able to afford health insurance in this country. These are people who, when they got sick, had to go to the emergency room for treatment, which then not only was a bad patient outcome, but it also is the most costly way to do medicine. And so the model that we ended up using in Congress, actually, a lot of liberal Democrats are upset about this because it is a market-based system. What it says is that states will set up insurance exchanges where people can actually buy insurance policies through the competition through an exchange of insurance companies. So if people like the insurance plans they have right now, they can keep those plans. If they don't have insurance, or if they want to see if they can get a better option, they can go through this competition in the exchanges. Some people like me said we should have a public option in those exchanges so that we should have some kind of essentially a non-profit that insurance companies would have to compete against. But that was defeated, so that's not even in there. Now, let me talk about a couple of these issues because you can't give all of the benefits that we've all started to give now that all Americans agree with, insuring kids up to age 26 on their parents' policies, being able to have insurance if you have a pre-existing condition, not having discrimination in insurance policies because you're a woman, being able to have well women visits, closing the donut hole for seniors, all of these things that have started to take effect, you couldn't have them if you didn't have everybody in the system, which is why it's a universal, so you couldn't do the cost. So all of these options that Mr. Stroud and the Republicans talk about, buying insurance across state lines, you can do that right now. What they're talking about is insurance companies could incorporate in a state that had very few minimum requirements for insurance. They wouldn't require cervical cancer and breast cancer screening or whatever. And sure, they could sell those products, they'd be cheap, but people wouldn't get actually good coverage. So it wouldn't really help. It might be cheap, but it wouldn't help them get the health care that they needed. So what the Affordable Care Act says is we're going to have certain minimum standards that everybody has to offer, and that'll improve the insurance. And just one last thing is, we have one of the most expensive healthcare systems in the world, but as results, we have about the 38th ranked results in the country. We think we should be number 1 in results and number 38 in cost.
That's a very good rendition of the big government mandate talking points. But you're not going to be able to take or keep your insurance. There's this 50 employee cap, for whether you have to be on it or not. Employers are going to stop. If they want to grow, they're going to stop, and they're going to force people to go on to...
Have you seen that happen?
Yes. I talk to people. I'm in business. I talk to people all the time. I have a conversation daily with people that are I had a conversation just night before last with somebody. He says, I got 52 employees. He says, I need to decide what to do. Do I go down to 49, or do I just, move forward? People are concerned about it.
Well, can I ask you a question? Does that person offer health insurance
Yes.
to their employees right now?
Yes.
Because under the Affordable Care Act, they'll be able to get a subsidy from the federal government to offer the insurance. So why would they eliminate the insurance?
Well, the issue here is really about choice and federal government mandates. This is not free. There's going to be 20 plus new taxes. I have a business. My personal health care insurance has gone up 30%. At some point, it's going to be too expensive. It was supposed to go down, but it didn't. It went up. We already have things in place like Cover Colorado. We already have in place issues like statutes that require us. I mean, it's the American way. We take care of people. Nobody in this country ever goes without health care if they need it. Putting federal government control with additional taxes, additional bureaucracy, and limiting the choice of citizens and businesses is not the way to go. There are other ways to accomplish exactly what you see, but the, having it mandated from the federal government is more expensive, less freedom. It's wrong.
A good number of people who are covered by health insurance are in government programs right now, Medicare, the VA, other things. So, and that doesn't seem to run, you know, in a bad way. Certainly there are excesses and abuses, I assume, that are being attacked all the time.
Sure, there's fraud. There's fraud. There's a tremendous amount of fraud because of, you know, people will do that if they can. But, you know, just recently there was this claim that there was $716 billion saved out of Medicare. It was just a transference of costs. It took it out of the current Medicare, and it's going to support Obamacare.
Well, actually,
this is one we've heard from the presidential race a lot.
This is something that I don't think it's really been well explained in the presidential race. But the Republicans are really focused on saving money and eliminating unnecessary government expenditures. The $716 billion that we cut from Medicare was money that we were paying insurance companies to give them an incentive to offer Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage, you know, it's managed care and it's administered by insurance companies. Originally, the extra payment was put in there, an extra payment over covering costs was put in there to give them, insurance companies, incentives to offer this insurance to seniors. But now, Medicare Advantage is wildly popular among seniors because it gives extra benefits. So the $716 billion is just extra gravy that we are giving to the insurance companies. So we said, why not cut that out and use it to close the donut hole, to make prescriptions more affordable for seniors, and to be able to give them wellness visits and coverage for things they need. So, you know, we weren't cutting Medicare. We were cutting excessive payments to insurance companies. I think we can all agree that's a good idea.
It sounds like it.
Well, there's still going to be millions of people not covered because there's going to be people in transition. There's always going to be people not covered. It's just, I don't think anybody fully disagrees with that concept. And our care is going to Our care is the center of this. Health care is the center of this whole thing. That's not going to be as good because let's face it, we are going to have rationing. We will have rationing. It'll be more pervasive. There will be fewer doctors, and there will be more people in sort of the public bucket that are not buying their own personal health insurance or taking care of themselves. We're going to be prevented at some point from having being able to buy healthcare. Doctors, you know, healthcare treatment. It's in the Affordable Care Act. Eventually, you will not be able to go and negotiate with your doctor and say, I want that knee replacement. I know that I'm 75 years old and I'm not going to be authorized to have that into the plan, but I'll pay you for it. That will be not available. We're going to have less effective health care, and it's going to be more expensive in taxes. We're going to also cost jobs because business will not grow because the cost of it to business will be more. It's really an oppression from the federal government that needs to stop.
Let me ask the Congresswoman to give us a short wrap-up on that. I want to take this a different direction.
Yeah, let me just say briefly, we have rationing right now. Anybody who's tried to get a procedure from their doctor and their insurance companies denies coverage knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so what the Affordable Care Act does is it puts a minimum standard of what everybody needs to get, but you're still going to be negotiating through the insurance companies. Another thing we're trying to do is develop standards of practice for everybody so that if you're in the Rocky Mountain Health Plan, for example, then you're getting a high standard of care for cheap. If you're in McAllen, Texas, you're having a test a week. And so we need to get some kind of standardization, and that'll also help reduce unnecessary litigation, by the way.
All right, let's move from health care to young people, because I know each of you has two daughters who are young adults just coming into the world. What are the things that you are thinking about for their future and, you know, your grandchildren's future?
I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about as we have fewer and fewer choices. I mean, we're having fewer choices with light bulbs and water faucets and what kind of car you can drive, and we have increasing pressure. We've had unemployment over 8% for 43 months, and it doesn't look like it's going to abate anytime soon. My daughters are coming out of college, and they want to work, and they want to make choices about their lives. And what I worry about is that they no longer will have those choices that I had to be able to decide to do this, that, or whatever, and that they'll be, their tax burden, the availability of their jobs, what kind of jobs they have, the cost of education. My daughters, the cost just keeps going up no matter what's happened to the economy. The universities, because of their ability to prey, if you will, on a subsidized tuition model that's put in place by the government. You know, my grandchildren may not be able to afford a good education without assistance from the government. That's wrong.
I think all of us want the same things for our children. We want our children to be able to succeed in this country better than we have. And we want all of the young people to be able to succeed in those ways. And the key really is being able to get the education they need to get the job that they want. And so one thing that I've really supported the last few years is, number one, taking the government out of college loans. We passed legislation a couple of years ago, and by the way, all the Republicans voted against it, which said that people should be able to get low-cost loans to go to college without having to have these huge profits go to private banks. The second thing is we expanded Pell Grants so that kids who really needed that extra financial assistance could be able to afford to go to college. And then the other thing, I think about this with my girls, is the ability to stay on your parents' insurance up to age 26. That's huge for these kids coming into the job market, because many of the entry-level jobs don't have insurance. And on a personal note, I think about my younger daughter, who's 18 years old, and she's got type 1 diabetes. If she didn't have the insurance thing that said that she couldn't be discriminated against because of that pre-existing condition, and if she couldn't stay on my insurance to age 26, that young woman would be uninsurable and her job options would be greatly limited in her life. That's just wrong to do in this society.
We've come to the time for a couple of closing statements here, and I will ask you to start, Mr. Stroud. What can you tell us in 1 minute?
Well, it's clear the differences between Congressman DeGette and myself. We want a lot of the same things, but the difference is that she's a big government tax and spend, mandate, control. I'm more for the other side, liberty, freedom, states' rights, individual. She's been in Congress, as you pointed out, a long time. She plans to retire from there. That's not what it's supposed to be. I think she's lost perspective about what Americans want, what people in Colorado need. We need jobs. We need to look at what we're strong here about energy. You know, we're a small business community. Things like regulation that we've just been talking about for the last 20 minutes. Suppress jobs, suppress the strengths that come with Colorado. I, on the other hand, I don't want to be a career politician. I'm in this, as we talked before the show, to stop this train wreck, to get it back to the American model. And I will self-impose term limits on myself, because I think that's what the Constitution expected. That's what our founding fathers wanted. I think that career politician is the wrong thing. And so, big government versus individual liberty. That's the difference between us. I mean, Diana DeGette is a nice woman. She's got a great moral character, but she's doing the wrong things.
Let's have her answer.
Thank you. Well, I've been really privileged, as I said, to represent this district, and I believe every 2 years the voters of the 1st Congressional District look at my record and they decide whether to rehire me. I think that my record fighting for the residents of the 1st Congressional District is frankly excellent. Even in these tough times, as I mentioned, I've been able to pass legislation that benefits my constituents. I've been able to work in a bipartisan way across the aisle to further the desires and needs of this country. But there's much more that needs to be done. In the next 2 years, we're going to have to work together in a bipartisan way to stop this sequestration that's going to happen in January, to stop us from going off a second financial cliff, and to stabilize the economy so that it can continue to grow, so that we can continue to create good jobs. The other thing we're going to need to do, we're going to need to implement the Affordable Care Act so that it benefits all Americans and so that it does increase the quality of care, it increases affordability for everybody, and it makes sure everybody can get high quality health care. I'm excited about the next 2 years. I'm excited about representing this district, and I just ask all of your viewers, please vote for me on November 6th. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to both of you. That is Colorado State of Mind for this week. You can see the program again at video.rmpbs.org. We thank Congresswoman Diana DeGette and Republican challenger Danny Stroud for tonight's good conversation on District 1. Good luck to you both in the next 18 days.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
This year, as in every other district, there are other people who are running against these two people. Gary Swing, the Green candidate, and Frank Atwood, the Libertarian, talked with us earlier this week. You can see that video conversation at rmpbs.org/panorama when you click on the Colorado State of Mind Congressional page. Next week, in our last candidate forum of election 2012, it's Republican Congressman Mike Kaufman and Democrat Joe McLosey in a tough battle for Colorado District 6. Join us for that next weekend. I'm Cynthia Hessen. Good night.
You should know, I was a debater in high school and college, so I love having, but they don't call. It's, you know, people don't call.
It's like you're the Maytag repairman.
Exactly, right. But I think it's really important to have these discussions.
Well, you know, so. It's truly. I mean, you know, I mean, you've been elected, and you've been elected 8 times, and there's something about that that's compelling. I mean, you know, but I worry more on a grand scale. I mean, you know, I think about. You know, we have to change the perspective of how our federal government deals with the states and the individuals. It's unsustainable. It's been going on.